Now here's the most important thing. Hopefully we're going to go down to one of the dugouts. We don't walk, tap, grab, get anywhere near the green grids. I'll explain to you why when we get down there. Obviously, it's pretty obvious. It's a game day and the grounds crew wants the grass in perfect condition. Believe it or not, you could have something on the bottom of your foot. If you just went over and tap it, it could spread a disease like wildfire through the grass. And the last thing head groundskeeper wants is grass is disease. So we stay off the grass. We don't go anywhere near. If you have any questions during the tour, I'll do my best to answer. Raise your hand. I'll see if I can get the answer. All right. So most of you said you're coming to the game tonight, right? And have you ever been here before to a game? So some of you, this is your first time. All right, so let me give you a little history of the ballpark, how we got started. The ballpark's official name is Orioles Park in Camden Yards. Very long name to have to write or repeat if you're a broadcaster. So a lot of folks just call it the Yards, or they'll say Camden Yards, the Yards. The reason for that is Camden Yards area has a lot more history than the ballpark that opened in 1992. In 1827, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Company developed this area as a railroad hub of the United States. It was the early days of the United States. This Baltimore and Ohio Railroad was one of the first major railroads in the United States. They ran the lines north to Philly, south to D.C. Eventually they went out west to Ohio. And then they opened the train station for passenger service, which is right out here in 1857. They opened that up. I'll show you at the end of the tour. And then in 1899, they finally figured out that we have these rail cars going all across the mid-Atlantic area here. We should haul freight. A lot of money in freight. They had to have a building to house the freight. And that's what we're standing in front of. This has become the crown jewel of the ballpark, the Camden Yards warehouse building. It was built in 1899. It took them 5 years to complete it. In 1904, it was done. It's 1,116 feet long. That makes it the longest building east of the Mississippi. If you stood it up on its end, it would almost be as tall as the Empire State Building. And it's about the length of a lot of these luxury cruise ships you see around the harbor. So the building was used up to 1976 to house all types of items that we moved up and down in the rail car. Everything from toothpicks to refrigerators would be in this building. Even hogs and pigs and sheep and things like that. Everything you can imagine was in this building. But by the mid-70s, the trucking industry had kind of eroded the business away from the railroad. Everything was being transported through the trucks. So the B&O folks were left with a huge problem on their hands. They had this huge building. It was too big to tear down. They didn't know what to do with it. They just walked away and abandoned it. They just left it sit here. And meanwhile, the Orioles were playing about 5 miles north of here, Memorial Stadium. It was a stadium built mainly for football. The Baltimore Colts played there. In 1954, the Orioles came and started to play there. They added an upper deck to make it fan-friendly for baseball. We had a lot of good years up there. 66, we beat the Dodgers 4 straight in the World Series. 70, we beat the Reds. 83, we beat the Phillies. So going back to 1983, we're world champions in baseball. The town's rocking and rolling, everybody's happy. But the very next year, the town was crushed with the move of the Colts to Indianapolis. It became the Indianapolis Colts. The town was devastated. They lost its beloved football team, and we were so afraid that the baseball team was going to be the next one to go. Back then, the owner of the Orioles was Edward Bennett Williams. He was a prominent D.C. lawyer. They had no team down there. All his buddies were down there and said, bring the team down here. We'll build you a new ballpark. Come on, you can move it down. We were always worried about that. So the Maryland Stadium Authority was formed to look and search and put the plans together for a new ballpark that would help keep the team here. So they hired a company called HOK, Hellman, Bovada, Castlebaum, to help them do the search and find out a good place to do the ballpark. They thought this would be a good spot because there's an old industrial part of town over here. They could acquire the building and the lands. And the warehouse, they looked at it. They said, well, that's got to go. 12, 15 years it's sat here vacant. All 983 windows are busted. It's an eyesore. We're going to tear that down. And we'll build a multi-tiered, concrete poured, artificial turf, possibility of a dome stadium. So they started to put these plans together. Well, the Oriole owner at that time, he said, you know what? I don't know if I want a multi-purpose stadium. I don't know if I want a dome. I don't want all this mortar and concrete. We ought to go back to brick and steel, the early days look at baseball. Why don't we try and study Wrigley and Fenway and look at some of the ballparks that aren't around and see how they were built. Ebbets Field, Shibe Park, Comiskey, and some of these other older ones. They said, why don't we look at them? Why don't we try and do something like that? So these ideas were being floated around among several people. Finally, somebody made the decision. That's it. we're going to restore the warehouse, we're going to build a brick and steel, real grass ballpark. Never mention the word stadium when you're in our ballpark. It is a ballpark. It is not a stadium. So when they did that, this pretty much changed the history of ballpark construction. We're now known as the ballpark that changed baseball forever. After we opened up, pretty much all the ballparks that opened after us tried to copy what we did here. If you go to Citi Field, if you go to Jake, if you go to AT&T out west or Petco, and you know, there's a lot of Philadelphia. Even the Nationals has kind of like a little bit of an old-fashioned look. So we kind of set the bar pretty high. But what we have that they don't have is the warehouse. When they decided to restore that, it became the focal point of the ballpark. The way it's configured, it's 431 feet down the line. We said, oh, that'll be great. Home run hitters will hit the ballpark. It'll be great for the fans. It'll be really entertaining. So they put shatterproof glass in the first 3 floors. They figured a lot of left-handed power hitters could hit a 431-foot home run, so there's going to be a lot of them hitting the wall. What they didn't know was the wind effect through here. The swirling winds that kind of go through here makes like a wind tunnel. No one's ever hit the wall in a home run. It's never happened because the winds swirl, the ball's coming out, it kind of dies and drops in the street. All the home runs land down there in the street. 81 in the street. I'm going to show you markers in a minute. And it's funny how that came to be, but the warehouse, when you see it on TV, it sticks out. None of the other ballparks have anything like that. Now, anybody been to Petco? They have like a little bit of a warehouse in their left field. They have a small little thing there, but they have the street behind it too, like we have here. But it's nothing like what we have here, so it makes ours unique. The warehouse has our ticket office, our team store here. If you like seafood, you want to try traditional Maryland seafood, Rick Dempsey's restaurant is right down there. He was a catcher for the Orioles, most valuable player in 1983 in the World Series. Now all the offices down that way are private offices. Up this end, the second and third floor has Oriole offices. The fourth floor is the main kitchen where all the food's prepared. And the fifth floor is Maryland Stadium Authority offices. 6, 7, and 8 are all dining, feeding, and banquet facilities. Fully restored, National Register historic buildings. Everybody wants to come in here when an office space opens up. The first thing they ask is, will I overlook the ballpark? They don't care about looking down and seeing Harvard Place. That's our history in a nutshell. That's how we came to be. Anybody have any questions? One thing I want to point out before we start, I can walk out here a little bit so you can see it, because it's going to come up later on. You look down the end of the street, see the great big Bromo seltzer clock tower. Now the hands are being restored, so the hands are not. But that was built in 1911. When it was built, it was the tallest building in the city. And this guy, Isaac Emerson, he has this Emerson pharmaceutical company. He's developing a product called Bromo seltzer. It's like an upset stomach product. He goes over to Florence, Italy, he sees a tower like this, and he goes, what if I put a tower on top of my manufacturing plant in Baltimore? I can make a lot of money here. If I put Bromo seltzer on the clock face instead of numbers, I'll have letters. He goes, I'm going to do one step more. Can't see it now, but on top of there, he had a 51-foot tall steel bottle that rotated and was lit up at night. It weighed 17 tons though. So it started to crack the base up there. The city made him take it down in the 1940s. So it's no longer there. If you Google pictures of it, it's pretty neat. But that is a very unique piece of architecture. It's always a point to point different areas out in the city. And they are, like I said, they're restoring it. The clock face is 25 feet in diameter. It's actually larger than Big Ben in London. So it's pretty neat. Alright, so we're going to walk down this way and start looking at some of these home run markers. Alright, first thing we're going to see right here. Now these are some of the longest shots because it's a longer trajectory. There you go. Ken Griffey Jr., 438, Lee Stevens, 430. The further we go down here, the distance is getting like a little bit shorter. Very cool. Hey, where's that Cleveland guy? There's your Jim Tomey. There you go. Jim Tomey right here. Chris Davis. Yeah, Chris Davis has 8 out here. 3 last year. The only 3 hit out here last year were Chris Davis. Now, some years we've had none. The most we ever had was 11. But Chris has the most. He's got 8. Next closest is Luke Scott. He don't even play anymore. He's got 6. And Brady Anderson, Rafael Palmero, they have 5 each. There's another Jim Tomey. Jim Tomey's a pretty terrible guy. I want to get by. Now, there's always an exception to the rule. I said no one's ever hit you off. Well, we have a little thing that they play before the All-Star game called the Home Run Derby contest. Now, it's not a real game. It's a lobbed-in room service type pitch from a lot of guys and their high school coaches. Even a father or somebody in the family might throw a pitch to him. Well, Ken Griffey Jr. did hit the wall in the Home Run Derby contest, 465 feet, 1993. Wow. So it's designated, you know, there's a marker there, but it says Home Run Derby, not like a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. That's the only time it's happened. So maybe if we have another All-Star game here, maybe somebody else will do it.
So is there an official person that sits here and waits for these balls so they can mark them spot on?
We have Oriole employees out here that are watching for that type of thing. Plus there's a video grid that they can watch. So these are fairly accurate, you know, where they go. So when the funny thing about it is, a lot of people I'll give tours to, they maybe already have been to a game and they've been out here. When it's a crowd of people out here, you don't even know these are here. People walk over and they don't even realize they're here. So, you know, it's so funny how that happens. So people do have to be careful. There's signs out here, watch out for batted balls and things like that. You could get hurt. Yeah. Okay, so if we had a sellout, all 45,971 seats were sold. You could still get a ticket and stand. This is one of our standing areas. We have this area and one over there. Toward the end of the tour, you'll see that. We don't have that many sellouts. It doesn't happen that often. Only opening day, maybe in Boston, New York, something in town or something like that. And kids are out of school and it's a weekend. That'd be about the only time it happens. But this is a very nice area for the fans. When I mentioned earlier about coming out, gates open, watching the end of batting practice, right here is where it is. The guys, when they're coming out for batting practice, they know the fans are out here. A lot of kids are bringing their gloves and all that kind of thing. They're trying their darndest to hit a ball out here. So it's pretty neat to be out here at the end of batting practice. When you come to the game, these poles represent the American League standings. So the first row is the east. Just check the paper. Right now the Orioles are half game in front of Boston, so they are right there in the first pole. Working your way down, right here where they belong. The Yankees. Now, the Central's in the middle row, the Astros last night, I didn't check them. We don't really care about them. That's pretty cool. The one blunder in the building of the ballpark when we opened up was the poles didn't have that. All the fans are out here trying to catch the souvenirs. They run into the poles, they're having neck and shoulder and back injuries. They actually had a special company come in within days of opening to get this patio to protect the fans. I didn't think about it. This is actually called Eli Jacobs Plaza. That's the gentleman that was the owner after everything. You know, go back to the old-fashioned class. He brought a lady in named Janet Marie Williams, who did a lot of the, Janet Marie Smith. Janet Marie Smith. Who did a lot of the research, development, to put the old-fashioned ballpark design together. After she left us, she went to Ted Turner and did Turner Field. She also went to Boston and did the renovation of Fenway Park. She did the monster seats up there. So now she's out working with the Dodgers, doing Dodger Stadium. So the lady's had a big impact on everywhere she's gone with ballpark design. All right, while we're out here, the foul poles are both from Memorial Stadium. They fit into the configuration of our ballpark design. So when you walk by, you'll see a plaque saying Memorial Stadium 1954. So we're going to actually go around this way.